Royce. Daniel Malen! Wonderful!
Fantastic from Royce. Jude Bellingham, that's excellent. Jude Bellingham, this is absolutely brilliant. Jude Bellingham! Absolutely magnificent. Reina, brilliant from the American. Just like that. The best of clearances. Oh, what a volley! Matt Hummels!
Grant in for Haaland! Like he's never been away! The man in front of goal who is simply deadly.
Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. I think it's been a few weeks or about a month. A lot has happened. We've had some preseason games. I don't remember if we've had any new signings or not, but we do have some news about one of our new signings. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into season predictions. We've got a special guest. But first, Carver is joining me. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And we're going to do a whole season preview, getting ready for things because we're kind of real quick on the Bundesliga season. Plus, we have a Pokal game. But Carver, do you want to, like I said, we got a guest. Do you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely, I would be honored. We have Brian Straub with us. He's a writer for Get German Football News. He's a contributor at BVB Buzz. I'm sure you've seen some of his work online on that site. He's also a contributor at Playing for 90, as well as a photographer who takes beautiful pictures of landscapes, animals, and much more on Instagram at Snap and Pros. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the very detailed plug there. It's good to be here. Happy to talk Dortmund with you guys.
Oh, of course. Thanks for coming on the show. Always happy to have you here.
Brian, before we get into what this episode is about is previewing and all the news lately. We started this podcast because we're just two Americans who got into Dortmund. Carver's been a fan a lot longer than me, but I want to ask how your Dortmund story, how you became a fan, found the team, and then kind of how you have progressed into now being a big contributor for Dortmund news that we all read
and love.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like I started my love affair with Dortmund back in, I would say 2011, 2012. It was right before the Euros were supposed to be hosted by Poland and Ukraine jointly. Because I'm of Polish heritage. So I was like, you know what, let me try and find a team that kind of goes along with that. And obviously at the time we had Lewandowski, Błaszczykowski, and Piszczek all playing at the same time. And that was kind of the first thing that kind of attracted me to the club. So I kind of started watching it for them, but I stayed for the fans and for the just general vibe of the club.
Can't beat the general vibe, man. Absolutely not. And huge Piszczek fan as well. I love the guy to death. I know, what was it, 2 seasons back ago now, and there was one other guy in the Dortmund fan club for St. Louis, and every single time we were at the bar, we're like, why is Piszczek not playing? We do not have a single right back that is that needs to play at the level that we're demanding at, and Piszczek is that guy. And then finally, towards the end of the 2021 season, whenever he came back to win us the Pokal, it was a sight to see. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Having him come back and play a pivotal role in that season was amazing. So definitely good to see.
Yeah.
What was kind of the transition from becoming a fan, maybe a casual fan, into being a contributor and writing for BVB Buzz and all that? How'd you get into that?
So that was actually kind of random. I didn't really expect it to be a thing. I actually used to read BVB Buzz a lot, especially when I first started being a fan. But around 2018-ish, I had just graduated from grad school, and I was kind of just looking for, something to do. And, I'd always enjoyed writing, but I never really thought that would be something that I would pursue. But I was like, you know what, let me see if I can submit some samples and see if it'd work out. And it ended up working out, and 4 years later, here I am.
Awesome. Nice. I guess we should probably start. We'll bring the energy back up, but we're going to start, I guess, with the news that's been breaking around the world, which is the news with Sebastian Haller. He was originally taken out of the team to not play in the friendly against Valencia the other day when he was feeling unwell after the training on Monday, and was later pulled in for further examination, and they were finding a tumor on one of his testicles. And there's not been much more information that's been released. A tumor is not necessarily cancerous, and if it's diagnosed properly and quickly, sometimes it can be benign, and it can be, people can be on their road to a speedy recovery relatively quickly. So obviously just hope for the best for the best of health for Sebastian Haller more than anything else. I hope he gets the best treatment that he can get. I know Sebastian Kell, sporting director, came out and had a quote. We'll do everything in our power to ensure that he has the best possible treatment. I think he had some more examinations scheduled with different specialists in the next few days, so he will be getting seen and getting proper examinations, proper diagnosis. But what a blow for, him personally, of course, and a blow for the club. I know the vibe around the club, from what I've heard from Terzic's press conference earlier today, was a little bit down, but it's just a matter of, trying to stay organized, stay galvanized, and motivated for the next seasons to come, or the next few matches to come, because like Sebastian Kale said in another quote earlier this week challenges are going to come very quickly. So, again, it's just staying motivated and staying organized. And also, Terzic brought up the teenager Bradley Fink from the second team. He's been called up for the replacement, and all the best of luck for him as well. It's a chance for him and also for Moukoko to prove themselves in this team. This is, arguably the best chance Moukoko is going to get in his young career to really come out and make a statement for himself and hopefully earn his spot.
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously a very complicated situation, and it's one of those situations where I guess the sporting aspect kind of takes the back seat. Mm-hmm. We obviously, like you've already said, we wish Haller the best and a speedy recovery. It will be interesting to see how Dortmund copes with this. Like you said, Bradley Fink has already been called up, and we haven't really seen much of him in the first team, if at all, if I'm correct in saying that.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see how both him and Moukoko cope in carrying the front line for however long Haller is out at this time.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from you, Jake?
I don't want this to sound harsh because, I'll just preface with, our first thoughts are with him and for a speedy recovery for him as just like a fellow human being. Like, we don't want to see anyone have to go through this. The downside is like the fan is like, unfortunately, this is our star striker that we're bringing into. We talked about him a lot in the last episode. It almost feels shorthanded, like we got shorthanded a little bit. And I don't mean that any like woe is us. Like, it's more like I said, thoughts to him, his family, and all we want to ask for is a speedy recovery. But I guess your thoughts, both your thoughts moving forward. Where do you think this potentially leaves us? As you said, we don't know how bad the situation might be, or he could make a recovery fairly quickly. Best case scenario. That's what we're hoping. But I guess as far as a sporting standpoint, what are your thoughts, Carver?
Yeah, and I know the momentum was just building through the roof. It seemed like through this whole summer with just, the not the complete rework of the team, but my God, the holes that were gaping for so long, we've made an actual attempt to plug those holes, and also arguably gotten the best replacement you could think of for Haaland with that kind of budget. And just with that news, it kind of just puts a wrench in everything right now. And now you're looking at this club thinking, can this squad produce enough goals and firepower overall to compete with Bayern this year? I'm still going back and forth all day. I've been thinking about it, and I'm not entirely sure yet. It kind of threw some of my, predictions off, or at least beginning of the season. But, we basically had an entire half of a season last year without our striker and had struggles. But, we've added to our attack. In a variety of different ways, in the likes of Adeyemi, Jamie bynoe-gittens is going to be coming through the team this year. And, it's going to be an even bigger challenge now for Terzic to bring his togetherness and to his team spirit to, really keep the club together and, hopefully move forward in the best way possible.
Yeah, I was just listening to the maybe a couple episodes, Chat Bundesliga, their podcast, and they specifically focused on Dortmund and our signings and are looking into next season. And one thing they mentioned with Haller was, it's like the final puzzle piece almost. Like, we've been needing a striker. This was the last signing, and when it came in, we were all excited. Like, we're like, this is a great signing, great striker. Looking forward, going to be awesome. And now, realistically, like, we might not have that. So, Brian, what are your thoughts from the sporting perspective for the team?
Sure. I kind of share the same sentiment you guys have right now, right? Haller was brought in to be that target man, that main focal point up front to, help us compete and be that goal outlet that we lost, with Haaland or whatever. But with regards to that, it, especially just looking at the at the friendly against Valencia that we played recently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the players on the field, it showed that we will be creating chances. I just don't know how many of those will be scoring. And that's kind of where that loss of Haller comes into play, right? The one player that we did bring in that was supposed to kind of maybe not fully carry that load that Haaland has like left behind in his absence, but do a fairly decent job of replacing. He's not going to be there right now. So the responsibility is going to fall on the shoulders of a lot of players and a lot of new players. So like you guys mentioned, Adeyemi and bynoe-gittens coming up. And then even we can technically consider Moukoko a new player as well, because he really hasn't had that much time up front for Dortmund. So it's going to come down to whether or not the team can gel in a way that will paper over that loss of Haller for the time being, and whether or not the players in question are ready to do so. And obviously, Adeyemi coming in, he came in with big expectations. He's a player that's expected to score goals for Dortmund, but he's not going to be playing that center forward role. So I guess we'll have to see whether or not this team will have the players to do that, but the goals will definitely have to be more spread out, and a lot more people will have to step up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know you mentioned the game versus Valencia the other day, and thankfully I wasn't able to catch it live, but I did see some bits and pieces here and there when they put the replay on YouTube. And Adeyemi looked like he was playing more of that wide role, kind of almost like where Malen was playing last year
right.
At times. And he looked pretty solid. I mean, we made, like you said, Brian, a handful of really good chances, especially in the first 20 minutes. I don't know how we didn't score. Just got to focus on building more fitness, working on finishing those types of chances, and hopefully just hoping for the best for the goals to be spread out. Yeah, it's going to be quite the interesting ask of some of those different players. I mean, especially since a lot of our new signings have been with the team, like actually training for 7 days now. So it's also, again, building that chemistry and that togetherness.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, you did mention, Adeyemi's performance. I don't want to take away at all. Like, I'm not trying to say that in any way. He won't be able to contribute to, Dortmund's goal tally. Like I said, he's there to come in and do a job. It's just more so whether or not it's going to reflect well to put more pressure on him to do that, because he wasn't necessarily brought in to be that focal point.
Yeah. Yeah, and we just also had some unlucky moments in general yesterday. I mean, not just with us missing chances, but two of their first goals were just unlucky deflections, and felt bad for Kobel. But yet another example also with those goals, deflections aside, of us not having a proper number 6 in the field. Jude and Mo were both pushed up pretty darn far, which is no surprise. I mean, they're both kind of more center mids. Jude maybe a little bit more attacking than that even, but I know the last episode a few weeks back I touched on kind of maybe checking out a different formation, different system. And my idea, which would be the 3-4-3, you still have Jude and Mo as those double pivots, but I think if you have Hummels in that quarterback role right behind him and in between him, he can help pick out those interceptions. I would argue he's one of the better center backs in Europe at that kind of thing, and hopefully plug up some of those holes we see in those counters against us, because we kind of looked like we were getting eaten up at times whenever, especially in that first goal, deflection aside, you look back and I think it was just Schlotterbeck that was just back there, and you have Guerrero pushed up, and then Jude and Mo, and it's just everyone else is just kind of deer in headlights almost.
I think, granted, this was the first game, I believe, that all of them, were on the field together at the same time. So, I mean, that kind of does have to be taken with a grain of salt. But to that point, I mean, you did mention, having a proper number 6 on the field. We do have Salihostyan, who just signed. And granted, he's still out with injury, I believe. I feel once he comes in and once he brings his energy onto the pitch, and we actually have that midfielder that can screen the back line, there's going to be less mistakes, less opportunities for those types of goals, like the ones we saw to pop in, even those deflections. So I think once he's in there, everything will look a little bit more stable. But I will say, though, that at least for the first half, the team did look a little bit more stable than it did last season. And I was talking with the fan club that I'm a part of, with all the members or whatever in our group chat, which is the Brooklyn Borussen fan club here in New York. And we were all saying, for the first 40 minutes, it seemed like everything was more stable. there were less, I guess, lapses. Then as the game went on, we kind of did fall back into the issues that we saw all throughout last season, defensively, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just comes down to at least one of the bigger factors is being lacking of fitness. And again, that's just going to come with time, and it's crazy that it's already July 19th. And it's like, man, the Bundesliga, and also on top of that, the Bundesliga starts, 2 weeks earlier because of the World Cup. And it's like, man, things are coming up quick. So, and I know Terzic was mentioning that in the press conference today as well, of just, we're short on time, but we're confident in our abilities. We're confident in the squad. And just a matter of, building on all those different aspects of, fitness and togetherness and chemistry as well, which thankfully Schlotterbeck and Sule have been kind of building that already for the national team, and Adeyemi at times as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for this next game against Villarreal, which I think is like in the next week or so, if I'm not wrong.
It's Friday. It's Friday. Yeah. I want to look back at the other games. Not. We don't have to dive in specifics, but just get your guys' overall thoughts. Lineup. Sometimes I feel like an idiot just talking about lineups because it's one thing I want to latch onto so much, and then you always see lineups changing and shifting all the time. So it's like, does it even matter? And they can shift during games, and it's like coaches know what they're doing way more than me. But so we saw first preseason friendly game. I mean, first few games were against lower division. I think all lower division German teams. So not taking too much from that specifically. But we saw like a 4-3-3 and then 4-2-3-1 for these last few. Carv and I have always been big on the let's do three at the back. And I thought with Sule and Schlotterbeck coming in, who both have played three at the back, I thought that's what we're going to look at. And now, I mean, we've played four at the back these last couple of games specifically. Taking the lineup aside, or if you want to dive in the lineup, what you think that might look like moving forward. Obviously, it's going to, I know you've been testing out, like Hummel's played more than Schlotterbeck and Sule. We haven't seen Sule and Schlotterbeck together yet. Yeah. And it's just kind of integrating them, I think, maybe in the structure and system and how we're playing. Mm-hmm. Preseason, again, it's preseason. So we're just working things out. A loss really isn't that big of a deal. I think we're all hopeful, like we want to see us win, especially like against a team like Valencia. Mm-hmm. I was thinking we just played Villarreal. That's the one coming up.
I got it mixed up too, even though I'm like well aware of both clubs. But
I mean, two Spanish teams with a V that start with V. You're just asking for confusion. But anyways, it's not that big of a deal. But obviously, against a European, a team we could see in Europe eventually, like we would want to see maybe a better performance. Of course, we subbed in some younger guys in that second half. Mm-hmm. But I guess your guys' overall take from seeing in the lineup and seeing all the young guys we brought in, and it was cool to see some young guys stick out. I mean, the first guy that sticks out to me is Prince Aning. Yeah. Is that, if I'm saying it right? Who has got a lot of time. Right. Who's scored a couple goals already. And he's been coming up with some. He's so young too. He looks so young, but he's like tearing it up.
I think he's like 18, but he looks like he's like 14.
Yeah, he does. And I haven't been able to see all these games like fully. I've usually been watching them while I'm working, so I'm like catching a glance here and there. Like the game yesterday. I mean, we're recording on Tuesday, so the game on Monday. I was working and I had the game on my computer, and every time I looked up, like it looked like we had an opportunity to score. And so I thought we were dominating that game until I checked the halftime stats and we were down possession like 35% to 55 or whatever the math is. I don't know. But I guess your guys' overall thoughts, any highlights or players that have stood out, or
Brian?
Yeah, sure. I mean, once again, I feel like I'm harping on Adeyemi today, but I really do think that he did stick out with his performance. I really did like his energy, the runs he was making, and overall just the commitment he had to making sure that he was where he needed to be. Granted, it didn't end up with him scoring or anything like that, but it's his first performance for the club, so I mean, it's not it's not the end of the world. Obviously, granted, it's also a friendly. I also really liked bynoe-gittens' performance as well. Mm-hmm. I thought he showed definitely a lot of strength, particularly going into the box and all of that. The dribble pass, I mean, winning the penalty and all of that. So I think both of them showed a lot of promise. I actually also didn't mind Guerrero's performance. I know, there's been rumors about him, kind of being shifted out and Raum coming in. We obviously don't know if that's going to happen yet or not. But at least going forward, he showed obviously all the things that he's, endeared himself to the Dortmund faithful for, all that creative, like quick feet, attacking display. Unfortunately, once again, it didn't end up in a goal, but these are all positive signs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And kind of to piggyback off that, I thought bynoe-gittens looked good as well. Man, I really am not trying to make like the Sancho comparisons, but I love whenever bynoe-gittens gets the ball and he's immediately looking to take people on and take those one-on-ones and just go at their defense. I mean, with his lightning pace, his dribbling ability, his agility, it just instantly puts everyone on their back heels, and he was able to draw that penalty. What looked like, just looked like that's just, he's been on the team for however long now. And yeah, you didn't get too much of a showing of Unning from this last game, but the previous few games from the lower division of German teams, he looked great. Him and Rota looked pretty solid. Still obviously different areas of their aspects of their game to work on, but at least, for the next after the next 2 or so years, if we keep those two left backs, we have like an actual pool of left backs, so we don't have to continue, every 6 months going like, who's going to be our left back. So that was nice, which kind of brings me into the next point of just the situations with our left backs of like Schultz, and then some other players like Chan and Akanji. I really I don't like the treatment that not only players like Schultz has been getting, but, go back in recent memory to Berkey as well. And we're just pushing these players out of the club that they've had their, I know Schultz definitely has not had a great time here, but, Berkey had his, so long here and had his great moments and was still kind of pushing those players out that, still want to give something to this club. And I'm just not a huge fan of just how we're, going about treating these players, especially behind the scenes.
Right. It's definitely harsh treatment on one hand, but at the same time, you do have to think of it from the club's perspective as well. They are trying to bring through a new era in the club. And granted, I'm not one to advocate for completely giving them the cold shoulder or all of that, but it's obvious. Nico Schultz is not, for example, just talking about him right now, because Berkey at this point is kind of an afterthought. It's obviously he's not going to get that run in the team at this point in time anymore, and he is a high earner. So, and there's also been talk about him refusing offers, I believe, from a couple clubs. So it's like, what is the agenda here? Is it to earn the high wages that you're earning at Dortmund and not play, or are you genuinely looking to move on in your career and actually end up playing? So once again, I'm not advocating for them to put them on the bench, but at the same time, you also have to take the players' motives into question here.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, but I read your piece the other day, Brian, about that exact same thing of Schultz reportedly having some offers here and there and turning them down. And he's on a big contract here, and yeah, his performances have been pretty piss poor for the most part. At best, he had like a decent performances here and there, but I look at it from another perspective as well of just like, would literally anyone else want to terminate a high-paying contract at their job just to make a fraction of your wages elsewhere? I don't know. I personally wouldn't do that. I know that makes me seem like someone like Schultz, and I'm not trying to defend him in like every aspect, but just in the, the aspect of like, he signed a contract and he's making good money, and he's not going to want to terminate that just to make very little elsewhere. So
no, absolutely. But then at the same time, the understanding has to be that, he's on high wages and he's taking up a slot in the squad. There shouldn't be this expectation that the club will have to, make sure he's involved in everything or in every lineup or anything like that, granted. And that's something that a professional footballer should not be happy about.
Yeah.
They should be at a club where they are, playing and competing for positions. But if a club is automatically saying like, listen, like you're not part of our future plans, they're telling him in advance that they're, planning with other players. If you're a professional footballer, you're technically, maybe you're going to be earning less, but let's say he's earning 6 or 5 million somewhere else. That's the thing you have to take into account. Is it the football that matters, or is it the paycheck?
Exactly. That's a very fair point. And it's always interesting to see just in general around European soccer, the players that are like that. Just off the top of my head, players like Oscar. I know he went to the Chinese Super League, if I'm not wrong, 6 or 7 years back. And, some players are just treating it like a job, which I guess I wouldn't expect Schultz to do that whenever he first signed with us. But yeah, that some players are treating it like that, and that's just, I guess, kind of is what it is.
for some players, it's important to make sure they have the funds to set up their families, which is also very important, and I 100% respect it. But I'm just talking about it from the viewpoint of the club at this point, right? Like, unfortunately, this is what it is. He hasn't lived up to the potential that we thought, he would live up to coming from Hoffenheim when he did, and that's kind of the nature of the beast at this point.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a situation where the club might just like kind of bite it and just like terminate the contract? Like take their losses? And
that's a tough question. I mean, I'm not one to speak for Dortmund here, because that's a big decision to make. I'm sure there's fees and everything that go into terminating the contract. Paying off players. I mean, even just looking at managers. I mean, to my understanding, when Marco Rose was terminated, now he was paid a hefty sum for that termination. Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of a loss either way. The ideal in that situation is, it never comes to that and the player ends up living up to that potential and playing a pivotal role for the club. But I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one.
And then also on top of that, even because I've thought about that as well. It's just like, okay, if we don't play Schultz anymore, it's like also what happens after that? Because already it seems like the majority of our fan base is trying to do that same thing, pushing Guerrero out the door, which I'm not a fan of either. But if we're trying to do that with both Schultz and Guerrero, then you're left with literally no left back. I mean, you have Rota and Aning, but for at least like maybe they can come in towards the end of the season. But Rota still needs a lot of work on his technical ability, and he's not near as defensively sound as we need at the level that we need him to be at. Aning, we just kind of said that he looks like a 14-year-old. I mean, he just doesn't look like he fits the physical profile of a defender that we need right now, is what I'm trying to say. I think he's still very much a kid in that aspect, and he looks very promising, but he's going to need time on our second team to really, get himself up to speed with the levels that he needs to be at. Yeah,
with those two specifically coming in, I mean, I don't think we didn't sign him to be our new left back. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, this is what Dortmund does. They sign guys, let them play in the U19s, U23s, and work their way up. And I think them getting all this preseason time, it's one, incorporating in the system, learning the system, getting some good competitive matches. I'm pretty sure Prince Aning, like, he signed and like played like a couple days later, or like later that week. Like, it was real quick.
And was looking great too. Like, he never missed a beat.
The turnover was fast.
Yeah.
And but also like those two specifically, like they're almost playing. I think Terzic is almost like, well, who can be my backup? I don't think they're definitely not playing for that first team spot, but maybe like when we need them, who's my first backup option? If Guerrero is staying, or we sign another left back, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I know you touched on Guerrero earlier, but I also thought he looked great, especially moving forward. There was a couple times yesterday, Monday, where he didn't track back quick enough, which led to some opportunities and scoring chances. But he did, like, moving forward, he looked fantastic. There was a couple times where he just blew past like 5 Valencia. Who do we play again? Valencia. Yeah. five Valencia players, like it was nothing. Yeah. But yeah, I think those, as far as those younger guys, it's playing for that second and third spot possibly.
Mm-hmm. And then moving on to just some other players too that people are still looking to possibly get out this window is, one of them, which was surprising me a lot so far, is Akanji. I thought towards the end of the spring it was going to be kind of quick for him, not only because he was just kind of fed up with this past season. He only had 1 year on his contract, but also just how good of a defender he is. I mean, in my opinion, he's exactly what a lot of clubs need in their defense right now in Europe. I mean, obviously a very solid defender. Extremely pacey for a center half, gifted weak foot, can play on either side of a defensive partnership, and he's incredible at passing. He still makes, boneheaded mistakes at times, but he's minimalized those a lot over the past few seasons, and I feel like that. I don't know. It's teams like I mentioned already, Juventus, especially now that they lost De Ligt. He could have been a solid signing there, even maybe at Chelsea. That they've lost Rudiger. They lost Christensen. Azpilicueta looks out the door. I don't know. Just there are a handful of teams around Europe where I'm just surprised they didn't even bid for Akanji.
Brian, I was going to ask you if you know like details on Akanji or any insight, because the last I saw, and I've been kind of distant from soccer. I've been like fully enveloped in soccer. I've been taking my summer vacation with a little social media break too. But I think the last thing I saw was he turned down some offers in Italy because he really wanted to go to Man United. So I don't know how much truth is behind that, if you know anything. I mean, I'm just like, dude, what if Man United doesn't want you? You can't just put all your eggs in that basket.
No, absolutely. I mean, just from the things that are coming out, Akanji definitely overestimated the amount of interest that, might be coming in for him, especially this summer, particularly with how he was very adamant about how he didn't want to sign a new contract. And now he does find himself in a precarious position because Dortmund have already signed his replacement, or two replacements for that matter. They have a whole new look back line. And he doesn't really prominently feature in that backline, I don't think, moving forward if he does stay. I guess going to the rumors, I mean, there were some whispers, stating that Inter Milan might be interested. And then, there was some talk about him being on a short list for them. And then there was some talk about him not even being the first choice for them. So I don't know, how many offers he might have rejected from Italy or anything like that, but there doesn't seem to be any concrete interest at this time. And I guess we'll end up having to see whether or not there ends up being interest, moving forward. I know that in the past, Carver, I believe you mentioned Juve as one of the possible destinations. I don't remember exactly who it was. I think it was Chiellini who mentioned him as a possible replacement for him once he leaves.
Yeah.
So that may end up being a possibility now that the De Ligt deal has gone through and he is going to Bayern. So maybe some interest might come in from that avenue. But at the end of the day, I don't know if I exactly share the opinion of him being as an amazing defender as some might say he is. Granted, I think over the last year and a half, he has improved. And obviously over the last year and a half, I think he's been our best defender.
Yeah.
But looking at our back line and the performances that we put in, I don't think that says much.
Yeah.
And which is why Dortmund, I feel, moved very quickly to both replace him and bring in a whole new look back line, because that's what they thought was necessary. So once again, I think it was an overestimation on his end as to, what sort of interest he would be getting.
Yeah, it was also an overestimation on my part as well. And it is going to be really interesting because if he does stay, what is it going to look like next season now that the relationship looks sort of soured, at least going forward? But I was one of Akanji's bigger critics when he first arrived. He would just make a mistake after mistake. But over time, when he kind of worked most, not all of by any means, but most of those mistakes out of his game and just bailing us out, left and right last season has maybe changed my opinion on him. But then towards the end of the season, then he just... Once he kind of reaches this form after like 4 years where he's the defender that we're hoping him to be at, now he's just kind of like trying to get out the door, which is, not the best thing to hear, I guess. But
it's not the best look, yeah.
Yeah. And then also, I forgot what his name was off the top of my head, but I think it's Bremer, if I'm saying that correctly. But Juve maybe already found, another replacement for Chiellini, and the center half from, I think it's Torino. And he's Brazilian, and he's kind of around similar age, and he was one of the better defenders in Italy. So, Akanji's looks like his options are kind of running out quick. So,
I think the player you're mentioning is also on that short list that Inter had drawn up. So, for if in the event that they end up losing Skriniar to PSG. So, I mean, he's kind of in the doldrums right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last player that I want to touch on before we can just go into some actual predictions for this season is Emre Can. I know very recently, if I'm not wrong, last few days, I think it was Bile that reported this, but saying that Terzic didn't fancy his attitude and maybe put him on the short list as well. But I think if I'm not wrong, that same report came out for Brandt, and Sebastian Haller came out saying like the rumors about Brandt are not true and he wants to prove himself and play at the World Cup. So I don't know if Chan's going to be here either. I mean, we were pretty set on him being here, and I was talking highly of him towards the spring. He kind of won me over a lot towards the second half of the season, just because we were so short on defenders, and he was, bossing the defense for away games like Mainz and getting those vital points. But I could also see him maybe stirring some unnecessary problems in the locker room if he's, given some attitude. So I don't know. And then you're also stretching yourself really thin if you don't want him either,
I would be cautious to, read too much into, the reports coming out and saying that there's problems in the locker room and all of that. I feel like we've seen that with multiple clubs, especially over the last season. I mean, from if my memory serves me correctly, there were a lot of reports coming out that even there was like disruptions in the Manchester United locker room.
Yeah,
the players quickly came out and squashed and all of that. I mean, that kind of stuff. I feel like it's not as concrete as it, at face value seems to be. With regards to Chan, I think he is a versatile player. I mean, he can definitely lose his head in games sometimes and put in, dangerous tackles and tackles that give away penalties and stuff like that and rack up cards. But I do think he is a versatile player, and I think he can be useful when in the right situation. Like if you're playing against a team that's playing that sort of like gritty game against you, he's the player that you want in that midfield breaking up play for your team. So, I mean, I think holding on to Chan would be smart at this point in time because, like you said, you don't want to stretch yourself too thin.
Yeah.
And if we really think about the options even that Dortmund have in defense right now, yes, you have Hummels, Sule, and Schlotterbeck right now. But if anything like that injury crisis that we had last season happens, are you putting in Koulibaly? Are you putting in Collins? Players that are still, I think, too young to cover for that. I think you'd have to have a player like Chan there to cover in those situations. Yeah,
I agree. Especially Collins. Maybe from what I've seen from Koulibaly, a shout can happen, a few months in. But I'm not too hype on Collins just yet. But
if anything crazy happens, Akanji might still be around too. So
right, yeah. That's true.
All right, so. Predictions for top four, lads. Doesn't have to be in any particular order, but I've been going back and forth. I feel like three of them kind of have like a locked in place for me, Dortmund, Bayern, Leipzig. But the fourth spot is interesting. I mean, it feels like every season in the Bundesliga, a team that should be competing for a top four, like just falls beneath like 10th place. And Gladbach most recently. So I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts. I have Union Berlin in fourth place for my predictions. I think they finished fifth last season, and they've made some really decent signings, and they've done some smart business in the window so far with a handful of different free signings. And for the American fans out there, Jordan Pifok will be their new number 9, which is really exciting. I mean, I was not expecting him to go to a team of that kind of quality, or at least stature right now. And I think they made literally 9 other signings, if I'm not wrong, and 4 of them were on a free. And so, yeah, just smart business all around. And I think they can continue to take that momentum over the past 2 years of being promoted and maybe push for Europe. What do you guys think?
I don't know if I want to put an order on it at this time.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to.
I don't want to jinx anything. But I definitely do believe Dortmund obviously will be within top 4. I'm not going to say where because I don't want to get too excited or anything. And especially with the news of Haller right now, you just really don't know where the team stands. Bayern will obviously be there. You mentioned Leipzig. I mean, the rational part of me obviously, thinks yes, Leipzig will be in the mix there. The romantic in me really wants Frankfurt to be somewhere in that mix.
Yeah,
just because I've liked the business that they've done, especially with Mario Götze coming back.
Yeah,
and playing for them this season. But one team I think will definitely also be there is Leverkusen, and because I think they've done some really smart business, especially in the front line. And granted, this isn't a signing, but extending Schick's contract was very big for them.
I did forget about that. That's very true.
That's a big thing for them. And I also think them signing Adam Klojek is a big signing for them because he is very, very talented. So I think those two up front for them are going to be very, very pivotal. And I think that they may drag them over the line and put them in top 4.
Yeah, and that's a fair shout. And God, the young talent that Leverkusen keeps pumping out, it's just no matter who they lose, the next season they're already getting another $70, $80 million prospect on the way. So
you lose a Havertz, you have a Wirtz.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. I mean, we're the exact same way, but yeah.
So here in St. Louis, we're getting our MLS team at the start of next season, and we have an academy kid who I think we signed from the Philadelphia Union Academy. Sorry, we're going off on MLS talk here for a second, but relating to Bundesliga, he's already been linked with Leverkusen. There's already talks that he
I remember you
might
telling
be
me
lined
about
up
that.
with them, so he could play next season for St. Louis and then be off to Germany.
Yeah. Or he holds it down in St. Louis.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know how much St. Louis loyalty he has since he came from Philly, but
what's not to love? We have so much history.
We got Berkey.
Yeah.
That's the main attraction right there.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback off you guys a little bit on your answers, and I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit because I liked your shout for Leverkusen and Frankfurt. I wanted to be really romantic with the Frankfurt shout just because, I mean, we mentioned it last week. I mean, I like to watch them, especially, I mean, it is big because Knauf and just their run in Europe was really cool to watch. And I think if they can keep pushing, to me, they seem like they have the right momentum where they're going to have that drive and fire to keep pushing. Where I think, I do think, so I would say them or Leverkusen for me would be fighting for that 4th or 5th spot. I think Leipzig is going to be there. But I also think, a big part of this success last season, not to take away from the coach who came in, but I think a lot of that was the new coach bounce and then being able to ride that for a while. I think they'll still have a good run, but I think they might start a little slower than where they were at the end of last season. Yeah,
with Frankfurt, I hope they do well as well. I know they got a real solid manager in Oliver Glasner. It's just, I wonder how they're going to continue to keep that momentum and fitness going through the Champions League now. Because if I'm not wrong, when you win the Europa League, I think you're in the Champions League automatically.
Yep.
So I wonder how they're going to be able to just keep that momentum going throughout the season. But it'll be really interesting to see. And I wasn't going to I told myself I wouldn't do this and get hyped on Dortmund, like maybe potentially having like a chance to win this year. But with the Haller thing, and then also Bayern have been making some great business as well. I mean, they spent a lot more than us, don't get me wrong. But just recently with now just getting De Ligt confirmed, that's a hell of a defense. I thought our defense was going to be the best on paper, but then you're looking at Bayern's and it's like, Jesus Christ. I wonder what this means for Upamecano, because you have De Ligt, you have Lucas Hernandez, and now you have Upamecano. And I could be wrong, Brian, but I don't think Nagelsmann has ever ran much of a back three. I could be wrong on that, but
not to my knowledge, though. Granted, I don't really follow Leipzig super closely. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Upamecano will be starting over De Ligt and Hernandez. I think that will be the starting back two.
Yeah.
And I think Upamecano, particularly because of the fact that, he didn't have the strongest of seasons last season. I think that's why the idea of bringing De Ligt in the first place sprung to mind for, Brazo and Bayern in general. So, I think he's definitely going to be a bit more of a sporadic starter for them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll see how much minutes he actually ends up getting, because I think that's a very strong back line for them at this point in time.
Yeah, which is crazy because I know Nagelsmann really obviously fancied Upamecano. He brought him through the ranks at Leipzig and then brought him over to Bayern. So to kind of give him the cold shoulder was interesting to see. And then obviously Bayern have also now officially got rid of Lewandowski to Barcelona. Also, I didn't know until just today. Did you know his contract was 4 years to sign for Barcelona? He's 33. That is nuts. I had no idea. Obviously you can get Lewandowski to be at that elite level for like 2 years, but I can't see him pushing on at 36 at this kind of level. I could be wrong. I don't know, but
I mean, I feel the way sports medicine is going, and the fact that players' careers constantly keep getting, extended. I mean, you can look at Zlatan. I think through his extension right now with Milan, I think he's going to end up being 41 at the end of it. So I mean, and he's a forward. That's fine for keepers like someone like Buffon, who to my understanding, I think he's still playing for was it Sampdoria?
Yes, I think so. No, I think you're right.
But he was still playing for them in his 40s. So I mean that's understandable for a keeper, but for someone like Lewandowski, I think or for a player who plays in attack, that is something that's less heard of. But as as we've gone over the years, I think players' careers have been extended. I think he could still play at a relatively high level for Barcelona for a few years to come. I don't think it'll be 4 years necessarily, but but definitely the next 2-3 years, I think he'll still perform.
Yeah. And it may just be going through Barcelona's head too of like, if we get 2 years on Lewandowski, it's probably like a pretty solid return on their investment, and he can hopefully help the new forwards coming through the ranks as well. Because, their attack, some of them are overrated, but their attack has a lot of depth right now at Barcelona.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, I was just on a tangent about Barcelona, but anyway, so top 4, and then real quick, any predictions on just one club that you guys might get relegated? I was looking at Hertha. I know they just skimmed relegation last year, and they made it safe, but it just looks like they're continuing to slip further and further down the table consistently every year, and they're going through managers. It looks like more than us at times. I can't see. I don't think they've signed many players of any real substance at all either. So I grow worrisome of them. I don't know if you guys had any other clubs that came to mind.
Schalke.
Yeah, I obviously want them too, but I was looking at their signings. They made some really solid ones too. It looks like, some different ones. I know he didn't play much for West Ham, but Alex Krul from I think they loaned him from Spartak Moscow, and just some different other few things. Maya Yoshida too. I know I watched him play for Southampton every once in a while, and he looked pretty solid. So, I wonder how Schalke's going to be with their first year back up. That's going to be really interesting as well. I keep forgetting that they're back in. One could hope.
Yes, one can hope. To be fair, I am happy that they are back in the Bundesliga because you get the derby now. So that's always an important fixture on your calendar, especially when you're a Dortmund fan or just a football fan in Germany, because those games end up being crazy regardless. But I just think that because of their whole financial situation, they may end up being one of those yo-yo clubs that is up 1 or 2 years and goes right back down. I feel like they still have a little bit of they need a little bit more time to dig themselves out of that situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like I know they made a lot of different signings. I know like Norwich can be that same way of like they splash on a bunch and then they go up, get relegated, then sell, and then they just kind of repeat that effect. So, any other clubs you had in mind, Jake?
I don't know as far as relegated, but you just mentioned Norwich, and I mentioned it last episode we did with Farka taking over Gladbach. Mm-hmm. I think that's just going to be an interesting situation because I'm like,
do you think he's going to be successful there?
I no, I don't think so. But I've watched just what I've watched of Norwich in the Premier League last season and the Norwich back and forth the last couple of seasons. So I said it last time. It's just going to be interesting. Hopefully he can be successful just for his sake, because what a sad career if it's just up and down and up and down and up and down. I just thought that was an interesting signing, and that's just going to be one of those things where I'll probably watch a lot of their games just to see how it's going for him.
Yeah,
so.
and I don't know. I guess it just depends what Gladbach would define as success in their fan base. They finished in 10th last year, so I guess if Farka can get them to top 7 or something, that's not too bad of a season. But we'll have to wait and see. Man, time has flown by for us. I had a few other things, but I'm trying to pick just one other thing. Oh, I guess, are there any individual players that you're excited for, Brian? Could be in Dortmund, could be in the league, or anything in general? I'm
definitely excited to see how Lojek performs for Leverkusen, because granted he did really well, in the Czech league for Sparta Prague. And I just really want to see how he's going to step up to the level of play that, we see in the Bundesliga. Granted, he was a player that Dortmund was very much linked with for a very long time.
I was about to say,
one that I was a proponent for sure. I definitely wanted Dortmund to sign him. But yeah, definitely him. Obviously, I want to see how players like Adeyemi and Schlotterbeck perform for us, up and coming German stars. And to see how they fit it and how they help us push to the next level to be a bit more competitive in the league. And I'm also really excited for Salih Özcan. I feel that's not really one of the more glamorous signings that Dortmund has made in recent years. But I think for when it comes to how much we paid for him and what sort of value he brings to the club through his position and the type of play he has on the pitch, I think it'll be really interesting to have another very aggressive, fighting type player, in the lineup again. So those are the ones I think I'm most excited for.
Yeah, that's a great shout for us, Shane. I mean, he cannot go understated of just, like you mentioned before, the absolute steal that we got. I think it was like under $5 million for him, and he brings that grit, just like a very similar player to Chen, but I don't know much about him, but it looks like he's a little bit more of a level-headed player that's not going to get himself into, just unnecessary and boneheaded mistakes here and there. So, yeah, I'm excited for him. In the league in general, I know I already mentioned him already, but I'm really excited for Jordan Pifak. I mean, that number 9 position for the U.S. has been wide open since I think it's been before 2014. We just cannot find ourselves a striker. And I mean, it's really exciting. And these last few months that a lot of strikers that are American have put themselves in positions to take that number 9 spot. I mean, not just Jordan Pifak, but a handful of other players around Europe that are now escaping my mind for some reason, but are in that same role. And can hopefully, Daryl DK,
okay, yep.
another one. I mean, there's a few other ones that escape my mind, but to see him play at this kind of level, I mean, in the Bundesliga, obviously, but at a team that's not going to be fighting relegation, potentially even fighting for Europe, and he's going to be their primary number 9 is going to be cool. I'm interested to see how he performs.
Yeah.
Jake, any other players you're excited for?
I am. So Oshan, again, great shout. And he's the one I'm probably most disappointed we haven't seen yet in the preseason, because I've watched a lot of Adeyemi at Salzburg, watched a lot of Schlotterbeck and Sule. You kind of know what you're getting from those players. He's a little more of a mystery to me in a position that we really need, and he seems like a good signing. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can bring to us.
Yeah.
Just to add one more player there, because I mentioned him earlier, I think I'm really excited to see how Mario Götze performs for Frankfurt. Yeah. I feel like it's a bit of a redemption story for him, particularly after how his last few seasons at Dortmund went. And I feel like going to the Eredivisie, he spent a lot of time with PSV trying to rebuild himself as a player. And I really want to see what sort of effect he has on this Frankfurt side, who just won the Europa League, to see, whether he pushes them to that next level, like what you guys were saying, to fight for those European spots. So that's also one that I forgot to mention, but one that's an important mention, I think.
Absolutely. I think that shows a lot about his character and his motivation as well. I mean, I think he just turned 30. And after leaving PSV, I feel like it could have been very easy for him to been I'm not knocking the MLS at least as much as I used to. I used to not care about that league much at all, but he could have easily just went to an MLS team or something like that and then just kind of coasted for the next, 2-3 years or whatever. But he's chosen to go to a team, like you mentioned, Brian, that just won the Europa League, who's hungry for more and wants to compete. So, yeah, I'm excited for him as well. Absolutely.
Yep.
I know we're pressed for time. I think that's... do we just want to head real quick... Any quick predictions for Dortmund as a whole this season?
Brian, we'll let you give this.
Yeah.
Although earlier you're like, I don't want to think too much ahead of it, but we want your thoughts.
Oh God,
putting you on the spot.
It could be as quick as you want.
You know what? I'm gonna keep it simple. They'll score the most goals in the league.
Yeah, that would be cool to see, especially if if
the players gel.
Yeah, the players gel. If we can maybe get Haller back, as soon as possible, that'd be cool to see. I'm hoping, my prediction is we are keeping it at a really tight race come March or something. We're right there if we aren't already in first or something like that. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm predicting. Jake,
I want to see a good run in the Champions League.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, that too.
That would be.
It was a dud last year. I didn't even really think about that much just because of how horrendous that was.
Yep. All right. Brian, real quick, how can people follow you? I always love your input on Twitter. Mm-hmm. You're one of my favorite Dortmund people to follow. So everyone else needs to step it up. But how can people follow you, especially with all your writings and everything?
So like you guys mentioned, I do pieces for Get German Football News every now and then, and write for BVB Buzz. But you can just follow me at Brian_Straub94.
I didn't even plug your Twitter. I just realized that too. All those other things.
His photography Instagram.
You guys plugged everything else, so it's all good.
We're going to link everything in the description of this episode. So, Brian, thanks again for joining us, man. It's been awesome.
Brian, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
It's been awesome talking Dortmund with you guys. Really fun.
Awesome.
And, of course, you can follow us Twitter and Instagram at the BVB Pod. Carver's been keeping all our socials on lock lately as I'm on soccer sabbatical still. I'll jump in here and
I've
there.
been kind of slipping as well lately.
You can email us too if you got questions or feedback or anything. Hit us up at thebvbpod@gmail.com. We will be back. I don't know. We haven't really talked about it.
Maybe potentially next week, but definitely the following week with another guest. We have a few more guests lined up for August. So
keep your eyes peeled, ears peeled for that. Friday versus Villarreal, not Valencia. Villarreal. Dortmund's playing another club friendly on Friday. And then July 29th, we have our first Pokal game before the season starts on the 6th. So awesome.
All right.
We'll see you guys later.
Bye.